We are back again with another of our weekly video series of the three takeaways from Athens high school football last week.
Yes, we are. I'm Wynston Wilcox. Sorry if I sound a little fuzzy. I got some sickness. This weather ain't doing me right. So.
And to be fair, it was homecoming this past weekend. Last week, Friday night, Athens took on Meigs. I'm Jimmy Watkins, by the way. We're the Post. If you watch these, you know that. Last week they took on Meigs High School, a team that was trotting out a second-string quarterback, although you wouldn't know it because they dropped 46 points on the Athens defense, which continues to struggle with giving up big plays. And, I mean, the beat goes on and on. It just keeps coming back to the same stuff. The penalty issues are still there. Last week, I believe it was 7 penalties for 98 yards. Meigs managed to pick up 11 plays of 20 or more yards, which is by far a season high for Athens, even though they do give up a ton of those. And Ryan Adams, after the game, said he was just amazed at the repeated mistakes.
Yeah, you hinted on it. Athens is having a lot of trouble defending the pass, and we've seen a lot of that throughout the season. But Meigs was able to find that weak spot early on, and they just utilized it. That Zach Bartram kid. He had a 60-yard run up the middle in the first quarter, a 60-yard catch and run, later in the first half, and he just continued to dominate the Athens secondary, and that's something that they have to work on is who are they going to mark when they know that there's a star player out there, and how are they going to play their defense so nobody gets left open. There were way too many plays where the players were left open, and Meigs was just able to find the holes and they worked with it. There was one absence in the secondary, Logan Maxfield. We did not see him get on the field. There was an addition of Brendan Sano on defense, which helped on the run significantly, but in terms of dropping back for the pass, not having Logan there did help because he does have like 2 interceptions on the season, I believe. And so it just the defense wasn't as efficient as it has been in the past. Like Jimmy said, giving up 46 points is something they haven't done all season. I think the most they've given up was 31 at Logan, and that was 2 weeks ago. So.
Yeah, the last 2 weeks, the defense has turned into its worst performances of the season, which is not what you want. And it wasn't just like the past game. Yeah, they were getting burned a lot in the secondary. Although as the game went on, I think the secondary they hadn't been tested like to that sheer volume to that point yet. And it showed once they finally got their feet under them and they got more reps against the passing game that they started to play a little better, make more plays on the ball and know where to turn their heads and things like that. Trace Alvin also got his first start at corner, which had a little something to do with that. The misdirections were a problem against Meigs. All the exotic run looks that they got from there. Sano said himself that they were getting confused out there, and he's a senior. He's seen that stuff before. The part that really concerns me for the future, like Wynston alluded to, the star players. Adam said that they just don't match up well with the dynamic type of players like Bartram is, and Meigs really had Bartram, and that was it. Alexander only had Chase Harris, and that was it. And Adam said he was going to think about putting Trace on Bartram, but Athens got a comfortable lead before he really decided to execute that. But my question is, as you go deeper into the playoffs, you're going to see teams with more than one of those kinds of players on their teams. And sure, Trace can match up with one of them, but all right, where's the other guy going to go? They're going to have to figure out a way to bottle up those kinds of kids because they have been busting them for big plays all year long.
And speaking of playoffs, Athens doesn't have much breathing room to kind of mess up and still try to figure these things out because with 2 losses on their record, fortunately for them, they're not conference losses, but with 2 losses on their record, the margin for error is thin, and they cannot allow themselves to allow these big plays to get through because if teams continue to watch the film and continue to scout Athens, they'll figure out real quick that their pass defense is virtually non-existent, and you figure that out early on, and you have an upper hand over Athens already. So as we get close to playoffs with 3 games left, hopefully Athens can figure out something to try to control that pass defense and control the star players because that's been the 2 big things in addition to slowing down the penalties. Like Jimmy said, Adams has basically alluded to the fact that there's nothing he can do. It's up to his players to be more determined and more disciplined when they get out on the field.
he's tried his best to drill that stuff in there. Discipline, discipline, discipline. I mean, if you know Ryan Adams, he's all about the discipline and intensity and those aspects of coaching, and yet they still continue to, shoot themselves in the foot with the penalties and, have their eyes in the backfield in the secondary. And even, the front seven's pretty solid, but every now and then, and even more so this past weekend against Meigs and against Logan, they break contain, they lose an edge, someone, bites on a fake, and then someone busts a huge run. So they've got to get that stuff figured out. The talent is there. If they just have to be able to stay disciplined, and hopefully the secondary can get coached up a little bit, and defensive line and linebackers can stay home a little more often, because it's really just they're not really getting out personnel. They're not getting shoved off the line in the run game. And to a certain extent, the secondary is just getting beaten sometimes, but a lot of it's mental mistakes too. So this is all fixable, coachable. This team is really, really good talent-wise. They just need to be able to put it all together as a team.
Yep. Well, Athens is 3 games away from postseason play, and if they can get 3 wins here, it will definitely serve them well. If they can get there, I know they have their eyes on that last game of the year against Nelsonville York. But as we learned last week against Logan, we don't want to take teams for granted and take advantage of them. So hopefully, Athens can use last week against Meigs as a learning curve for their pass defense coming up this week against Wynston, and continue this presumable hot streak they need to get back to postseason play.
Yeah, they are undefeated at home, and I think they only have 1 road game left. So that bodes well for them, but they need to shore all the loose ends up.
Yep, I'm Wynston Wilcox.
I'm Jimmy Watkins.
Thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. We may try and utilize another midweek video with some preview stuff after we get out to practice tomorrow afternoon. So stay tuned for that. Other than that, we'll see you next week.
See you next time.